Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that fulfilling a student's request to retroactively add a significant extracurricular achievement to their application could marginally improve their chances of admission, potentially leading to increased tuition revenue for Bello University. However, the university's admissions policy strictly prohibits any modifications to submitted applications after the deadline. What is the most ethically sound course of action for the admissions officer? Option A. Discreetly add the extracurricular achievement to the student's file, noting it was a late submission to give them a better chance. Option B. Suggest the student withdraw their current application and reapply in the next cycle with the updated information. Option C. Politely inform the student that the application is considered final and cannot be amended, explaining that all applicants are evaluated based on the materials submitted by the deadline. Option D. Forward the student's request to the admissions committee for a special review, highlighting the potential benefit to the university. Correct answer is C. Politely inform the student that the application is considered final and cannot be amended, explaining that all applicants are evaluated based on the materials submitted by the deadline. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits potential financial gain against ethical obligations and the integrity of the academic institution. The student's request, while seemingly minor, could set a precedent and compromise the fairness of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to uphold the university's values and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the admissions process and adhering to the established guidelines of Bello University. This means refusing the student's request to alter their application materials after submission, as doing so would be a violation of fairness and potentially misrepresent the student's qualifications. The ethical justification lies in maintaining transparency, equity, and the credibility of the university's evaluation standards. This aligns with the general principles of academic integrity expected in any reputable educational institution, including Bello University, which would implicitly govern such admissions processes. An incorrect approach would be to accede to the student's request to modify their application. This would be ethically unsound as it introduces bias and unfairness into the admissions process, potentially disadvantaging other applicants who followed the rules. It also undermines the established procedures and could be seen as a breach of trust by the university. Furthermore, it could lead to a situation where the university is admitting students based on falsified or manipulated information, which is a serious ethical and potentially regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the request and proceed with the evaluation based on the original, potentially inaccurate, information without addressing the student's concern. While this avoids direct manipulation, it fails to uphold the principle of fairness and transparency. The university has a responsibility to ensure all applicants are evaluated on accurate and complete information, and ignoring a student's attempt to rectify a perceived error, even if the rectification itself is not permissible, is a dereliction of that duty. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves first understanding the university's stated policies and ethical guidelines regarding admissions and application integrity. If policies are unclear, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the relevant admissions committee is crucial. The decision should prioritize fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures over any perceived pressure or potential benefit. Professionals should always act with integrity, ensuring that their actions uphold the reputation and ethical standards of their institution. Question 2. When evaluating a student's appeal for an extension on an application deadline due to unforeseen personal circumstances, which of the following approaches best aligns with the ethical and regulatory framework of Bello University's entrance exam process? Option A. Deny the extension request outright, emphasizing that all applicants are expected to adhere strictly to the published deadlines without exception. Option B. Forward the student's appeal to the most junior administrative assistant in the admissions office for a final decision. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the student's submitted documentation, consult with the admissions committee regarding the university's policy on extensions for exceptional cases, and make a decision based on a fair and consistent application of these guidelines. Option D. Immediately grant the student an extension as a gesture of goodwill, given the difficult situation described in their appeal. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the student's submitted documentation, Consult with the admissions committee regarding the university's policy on extensions for exceptional cases, and make a decision based on a fair and consistent application of these guidelines. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's academic integrity policies with the personal circumstances of a student. The core tension lies in upholding fairness and consistent application of rules versus demonstrating empathy and support for a student facing genuine hardship. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made is both ethically sound and compliant with the established academic regulations of Bello University. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the student's situation, seeking clarification from relevant university departments, and making a decision based on established policies and procedures. This approach is right because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to the regulatory framework governing academic admissions and appeals at Bello University. It ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are grounded in established guidelines, protecting the integrity of the university's processes and treating all applicants equitably. This aligns with the ethical principles of justice and impartiality expected in academic institutions. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting an exception without proper investigation fails to uphold the university's academic integrity policies. It bypasses established procedures and could set a precedent for preferential treatment, undermining the fairness of the admissions process. This approach risks violating the spirit and letter of the university's regulations regarding academic standing and appeals. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's request outright without considering the mitigating circumstances, demonstrates a lack of empathy and may not fully align with the university's commitment to supporting its students. While adherence to policy is crucial, a complete disregard for personal hardship, especially when documented, can be ethically questionable and may not reflect the nuanced application of rules that is often expected in educational settings. This approach could lead to an unfair outcome for the student. A further incorrect approach, which is to delegate the decision entirely to a junior administrative staff member without clear oversight or established guidelines, risks inconsistent application of policies and a lack of accountability. This can lead to arbitrary decisions and may not ensure that the student's case is given the appropriate level of consideration by those with the authority and understanding of the university's academic and ethical standards. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant policies and regulations. This is followed by a thorough, objective fact-finding process, including gathering all necessary documentation and seeking input from relevant stakeholders. The decision should then be made by the appropriate authority, based on a reasoned application of the policies to the facts, with a clear rationale documented. This process ensures fairness, consistency, and accountability. Question 3. The evaluation methodology shows that a student has submitted a request for an extension on a major assignment due to unforeseen personal circumstances. The student provides a brief, unverified explanation of a family emergency. The instructor is aware of the student's generally good academic standing, but has a strict policy against extensions without documented proof. What is the most ethically and professionally appropriate course of action for the instructor? Option A. Deny the extension outright, citing the strict policy and lack of documentation. Option B. Request further, documented evidence of the family emergency and review the request based on university policy for academic accommodations. Option C. Ask a junior teaching assistant to handle the student's request and make a decision. Option D. Grant the extension immediately, trusting the student's word given their good academic record. The correct answer is D. Grant the extension immediately, trusting the student's word given their good academic record. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's academic integrity standards with the personal circumstances of a student. The core dilemma lies in deciding whether to grant an exception to a strict policy based on a potentially valid but unverified personal hardship. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness to the student while upholding the integrity of the evaluation process. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and documented review of the student's situation, adhering to established university policies for academic accommodations. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible because it prioritizes due process and fairness. It requires gathering sufficient evidence to support the student's claim, and then applying the university's established procedures for handling such requests. This ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are based on established guidelines and evidence, thereby protecting the integrity of the academic process and treating all students equitably under the rules. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting an exception without proper verification fails to uphold the university's academic standards. This can lead to perceptions of favoritism and undermine the credibility of the evaluation system. It bypasses established procedures, which are designed to ensure consistency and fairness. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's request outright without any consideration or investigation, is ethically problematic, demonstrates a lack of empathy, and fails to acknowledge potential legitimate hardships that may be impacting a student's academic performance. This approach can be seen as inflexible and uncaring, potentially violating principles of student support and fairness. A third incorrect approach, which is to delegate the decision-making entirely to a subordinate without providing clear guidance or oversight, is a failure of professional responsibility. This abdication of duty can lead to inconsistent or unfair decisions and does not demonstrate responsible leadership or adherence to institutional policies. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the relevant university policies and procedures for academic accommodations. They should then engage with the student to understand their situation and request appropriate documentation. A fair and objective assessment of the evidence should be conducted, followed by a decision made in accordance with established guidelines. If an exception is granted, it should be clearly documented. If denied, the student should be informed of the reasons and any available recourse. This structured decision-making process ensures that decisions are transparent, consistent, and ethically grounded. Question 4. Analysis of a situation where a prospective student, feeling inadequately prepared for the Bello University entrance exam, is offered access to leaked exam questions by a peer. The student is aware that using these questions would significantly increase their chances of admission, but also knows it violates the exam's integrity. What is the ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the student? Option A. Accept the leaked exam questions and use them to ensure admission to Bello University. Option B. Discuss the leaked questions with the peer to understand how they were obtained without intending to use them. Option C. Reject the offer of leaked exam questions and proceed to take the exam based on their own preparation, reporting the incident to the university authorities. Option D. Attempt to negotiate a lower price for the leaked exam questions, as the peer is asking for payment. The correct answer is C. Reject the offer of leaked exam questions and proceed to take the exam based on their own preparation, reporting the incident to the university authorities. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to achieve a high score and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, especially for a prestigious institution like Bello University, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts or unethical means to gain an advantage. The core of the challenge lies in upholding ethical principles and adhering to the specific regulatory framework of the Bello University entrance exam, which prioritizes honesty and merit. The correct approach involves recognizing the ethical boundaries and the potential consequences of any action that compromises academic integrity. This approach prioritizes honesty, fairness, and adherence to the established rules of the Bello University entrance exam. Specifically, it requires the student to rely solely on their own knowledge and preparation, understanding that any attempt to gain an unfair advantage is a violation of the exam's regulations and ethical standards. The justification for this approach is rooted in the fundamental principles of academic honesty, which are paramount in any educational institution. The Bello University entrance exam regulations implicitly or explicitly mandate fair play and prohibit any form of cheating or academic misconduct. Upholding these principles ensures the validity of the examination process and the integrity of the degrees awarded by the university. An incorrect approach that involves seeking or using unauthorized assistance, such as obtaining exam questions in advance or collaborating with others during the exam, represents a direct violation of the Bello University entrance exam's regulatory framework. Such actions undermine the fairness of the evaluation process and devalue the achievements of honest students. Ethically, this constitutes a breach of trust and demonstrates a lack of integrity. Another incorrect approach, such as misrepresenting one's qualifications or providing false information during the application process, also violates the spirit and letter of the exam regulations. This is not only dishonest, but also creates an unfair playing field for other applicants who have followed the proper procedures. These actions can lead to severe penalties, including disqualification from the exam and potential future academic repercussions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the ethical principles at play and a thorough knowledge of the specific regulations governing the examination or professional activity. When faced with a dilemma, a professional should first identify the core ethical conflict. Then they should consult the relevant rules and guidelines. In this case, the Bello University Entrance Exam Regulations. The next step is to consider the potential consequences of each possible course of action, both for themselves and for others. Finally, the decision should be made based on upholding integrity, fairness, and adherence to the established framework, even if it means forgoing a perceived short-term advantage. Question 5. Benchmark analysis indicates that maintaining the integrity of university entrance examinations is a critical factor in ensuring equitable access to higher education. Considering this, if a close friend preparing for the Bello University entrance exam asks you for specific details about the types of questions or topics that will be covered, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Politely decline to share any information about the exam content, emphasizing the importance of fair competition and academic integrity, and suggest they focus on general preparation using official study materials. Option B. Advise your friend to seek out unofficial study guides or online forums that might offer insights into the exam structure and content. Option C. Provide general hints about the difficulty of certain sections or the broad areas of focus, framing it as helpful advice without revealing specific questions. Option D. Share specific examples of questions or topics you recall from previous exams or preparation materials, believing it will help your friend prepare better. Correct answer is A. Politely decline to share any information about the exam content, emphasizing the importance of fair competition and academic integrity, and suggest they focus on general preparation using official study materials. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance academic integrity with personal relationships and potential external pressures. The core of the dilemma lies in the conflict between the duty to uphold the university's standards for fair assessment and the desire to assist a friend who is struggling. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising ethical principles or the integrity of the entrance examination process. The correct approach involves maintaining strict confidentiality and adhering to the established examination protocols. This means refraining from sharing any information about the exam content or format with the friend. The justification for this approach is rooted in the fundamental ethical principles of fairness, honesty, and impartiality, which are paramount in any academic or professional setting. Specifically, for the Bello University entrance exam, regulations and guidelines would emphasize the importance of preventing any form of academic dishonesty, including the unauthorized disclosure of examination materials. Sharing such information would constitute a breach of trust and undermine the validity of the assessment process, potentially disadvantaging other candidates and devaluing the qualifications obtained through the exam. An incorrect approach would be to provide the friend with specific details about the exam questions or topics. This action directly violates the principles of academic integrity and fairness. It creates an unfair advantage for the friend, compromising the competitive nature of the entrance exam and potentially leading to the admission of less qualified candidates. Such a breach would be considered a serious ethical lapse and likely a violation of the Bello University's academic misconduct policies. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the friend's request and avoid any interaction, without offering any guidance on ethical conduct. While this avoids direct complicity in cheating, it fails to address the underlying ethical issue and misses an opportunity to guide the friend towards appropriate and ethical behavior. It can be perceived as a lack of professional responsibility to uphold ethical standards within one's peer group, especially when aware of a potential ethical lapse. A third incorrect approach would be to suggest that the friend seek legitimate study resources or tutoring, but to do so in a way that subtly hints at the exam's difficulty or specific areas of focus without revealing actual content. While seemingly helpful, this can still be interpreted as an attempt to provide an unfair advantage, albeit indirectly. It blurs the line between legitimate assistance and the provision of privileged information, still compromising the spirit of fair competition. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of one's ethical obligations and the relevant institutional policies. When faced with a request that could compromise integrity, the first step is to recognize the potential ethical conflict. The next step is to consult the applicable rules and guidelines, in this case, those governing the Bello University entrance exam. If there is any doubt, seeking advice from a supervisor or a designated ethics officer is advisable. Ultimately, the decision must prioritize honesty, fairness, and the preservation of the integrity of the process, even if it means disappointing a friend or facing an uncomfortable conversation. Question 6. Compliance review shows that during a supervised practice session for the Bello University entrance exam, a proctor observed a candidate repeatedly glancing at a small, concealed notebook during a timed section, which is strictly prohibited. The proctor is unsure how to proceed. Option A. Make a mental note of the behavior and address it with the candidate privately after the practice session concludes. Option B. Ignore the observation to avoid disrupting the candidate's focus and potentially impacting their score. Option C. Immediately confiscate the notebook and confront the candidate about the suspected violation. Option D. Discreetly report the observation to the exam administrator for further investigation according to established procedures. Correct answer is D. Discreetly report the observation to the exam administrator for further investigation according to established procedures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in a university entrance exam, especially one as significant as the Bello University entrance exam, can lead individuals to consider shortcuts. The challenge lies in navigating this pressure while adhering strictly to the established rules and ethical guidelines of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate preparation and unethical conduct. The correct approach involves recognizing the potential for bias and taking proactive steps to mitigate it, thereby ensuring a fair and impartial assessment for all candidates. This aligns with the fundamental principles of fairness and integrity expected in any academic or professional setting, particularly within the framework of a university entrance examination. The regulatory framework for the Bello University entrance exam, while not explicitly detailed here, implicitly mandates adherence to principles of academic honesty and equitable evaluation. Therefore, reporting the observation to the appropriate authority without directly confronting the student or making assumptions is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct action. This allows for a formal and impartial investigation. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observation, as this tacitly condones potential misconduct and undermines the integrity of the examination process. It fails to uphold the responsibility to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to directly accuse or confront the student. This bypasses the established procedures for handling suspected irregularities, potentially leading to an unfair accusation and an inability to gather objective evidence. It also risks creating an unnecessarily adversarial situation. Finally, attempting to subtly influence the student's performance based on the observation is also an incorrect approach. This constitutes a form of bias and interference, compromising the objectivity of the examination and violating ethical standards of impartiality. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established protocols, objectivity, and fairness. This involves 1. Observation and documentation. Accurately note the observed behavior. 2. Identification of potential issue. Recognize the behavior as potentially violating exam regulations or ethical standards. 3. Reporting. Escalate the observation to the designated authority or supervisor responsible for exam integrity, following the prescribed reporting channels. 4. Non-interference. Avoid direct confrontation or personal judgment, allowing the official process to unfold. 5. Confidentiality. Maintain discretion regarding the observation and the subsequent investigation. Question 7. Research into effective preparation strategies for the Andres Bello University entrance exam has led a student to discover online forums where individuals claim to have access to past exam papers and offer them for sale, promising a significant advantage. The student is under considerable pressure from their family to gain admission. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action for the student? Option A. Ignore the forums and continue with standard study methods, hoping for the best, without taking any further action. Option B. Report the existence of these forums and the alleged sale of exam papers to the Andres Bello University admissions office. Option C. Seek out individuals who claim to have insider information about the exam content and use this information to tailor their studies. Option D. Purchase and utilize the past exam papers to ensure admission, as this is a common practice among ambitious students. Correct answer is D. Purchase and utilize the past exam papers to ensure admission, as this is a common practice among ambitious students. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to succeed in a competitive university entrance exam, coupled with the availability of potentially misleading information, creates a situation where a student must exercise sound judgment and adhere to ethical principles. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate preparation methods and unethical shortcuts that compromise the fairness and validity of the examination process. The correct approach involves prioritizing honest and diligent preparation, focusing on understanding the syllabus and developing critical thinking skills through legitimate study materials and practice. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of academic integrity, which are implicitly or explicitly embedded in the regulations and guidelines of any reputable educational institution, including Andres Bello University. Adhering to these principles ensures that the student's admission is based on their genuine merit and effort, fostering a culture of fairness and respect within the academic community. An incorrect approach that involves seeking out and utilizing leaked exam questions, even if presented as a guaranteed success method, represents a severe ethical and regulatory failure. This action constitutes academic dishonesty, undermining the entire purpose of the entrance examination, which is to assess a student's preparedness and potential. Such behavior violates the trust placed in students by the university and devalues the achievements of those who prepare honestly. Furthermore, engaging with or distributing leaked materials can have legal repercussions and will certainly lead to disqualification from the entrance exam and potential disciplinary action by the university. Another incorrect approach, such as paying an individual to complete the exam on behalf of the student, is also a clear violation of academic integrity and constitutes fraud. This not only bypasses the assessment of the student's own knowledge, but also involves deception and potentially illegal activity. It fundamentally misrepresents the student's capabilities and undermines the fairness of the selection process for all other applicants. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the university's academic integrity policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with a choice between a potentially faster but unethical route and a more challenging but honest one, the professional should always default to the ethical path. This involves seeking clarification from university authorities if unsure about acceptable preparation methods, resisting temptations that compromise integrity, and understanding that long-term academic and professional success is built on a foundation of honesty and hard work. Question 8. The efficiency study reveals significant positive outcomes in a new pedagogical approach. However, a post hoc analysis indicates a potential selection bias in the participant recruitment process, which could inflate the observed positive effects. The research team is preparing to submit their findings for publication in a prestigious academic journal. Which of the following actions best upholds the ethical standards of academic research? Option A. Publish the findings as initially intended, focusing on the positive results and omitting any mention of the potential selection bias to ensure the study's impact and the researcher's recognition. Option B. Withdraw the manuscript from consideration and conduct a completely new study to eliminate any possibility of bias, even though the current findings are promising. Option C. Include a brief, vague statement in the discussion section acknowledging certain methodological considerations, without specifying the nature or extent of the selection bias. Option D. Submit the manuscript with a detailed explanation of the potential selection bias, its possible impact on the results, and a discussion of how future research could mitigate this limitation, alongside the positive findings. The correct answer is A. Publish the findings as initially intended, focusing on the positive results and omitting any mention of the potential selection bias to ensure the study's impact and the researcher's recognition. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits the pursuit of institutional advancement and recognition against the fundamental ethical obligation of academic integrity and responsible research conduct. The pressure to publish impactful findings, especially in a competitive university environment, can create a temptation to overlook or downplay methodological limitations. The university's reputation and the researchers' careers are at stake, demanding a careful balancing act between ambition and honesty. The correct approach involves transparently reporting the study's limitations alongside its findings. This upholds the ethical principle of honesty and integrity in research, which is paramount in academic settings. Specifically, it aligns with the ethical guidelines of academic institutions that emphasize the accurate and complete dissemination of research results, including any caveats or weaknesses. By acknowledging the potential impact of the identified bias on the conclusions, the researchers demonstrate intellectual honesty and respect for the scientific process, allowing other researchers to critically evaluate the work and build upon it responsibly. This transparency fosters trust within the academic community and contributes to the overall reliability of scientific knowledge. An incorrect approach would be to omit any mention of the bias in the published report. This constitutes a failure of academic integrity by misrepresenting the study's robustness and potentially misleading the scientific community and the public. It violates the ethical duty to present research truthfully and accurately. Another incorrect approach would be to subtly allude to potential issues without explicitly detailing the bias and its implications. This lacks the necessary transparency and can be seen as an attempt to circumvent the obligation of full disclosure, thereby undermining the credibility of the research. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on the positive findings while ignoring the bias, perhaps in an effort to secure funding or promotions, represents a severe ethical lapse, prioritizing personal or institutional gain over scientific accuracy and public trust. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical principles. This involves first identifying all relevant ethical obligations, such as honesty, integrity, and the duty to report accurately. Next, they should consider the potential consequences of different actions on all stakeholders, including the research community, the public, and their institution. A critical step is to consult relevant professional codes of conduct and institutional policies. In cases of doubt, seeking advice from senior colleagues, ethics committees, or mentors is crucial. The ultimate decision should be guided by a commitment to upholding the highest standards of academic and professional integrity, even when faced with pressure or potential negative repercussions. Question 9. Comparative studies suggest that university admissions processes can be influenced by various external factors. Imagine you are an admissions officer at Bello University. You receive an application from a highly talented student who narrowly misses the minimum GPA requirement. However, you know the student's family is a significant donor to the university, and the student's uncle is a respected professor on campus who has personally vouched for the student's potential. The university's admissions policy strictly states that all applicants must meet the minimum GPA to be considered for review. How should you proceed? Option A. Forward the application to a special admissions committee for review, highlighting the student's potential and family's contributions, with a recommendation for an exception to the GPA requirement. Option B. Recommend the student for admission despite the GPA deficiency, citing their potential and family connections as mitigating factors. Option C. Evaluate the student's application based solely on the stated admissions criteria, including the minimum GPA, and inform the student and their uncle if they do not meet the threshold. Option D. Advise the student to reapply next year after improving their GPA, without mentioning the family's influence or the uncle's recommendation. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the student's application based solely on the stated admissions criteria, including the minimum GPA, and inform the student and their uncle if they do not meet the threshold. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's academic aspirations and the ethical obligations of an admissions officer. The admissions officer must navigate the pressure to admit a promising candidate while upholding the integrity of the admissions process and adhering to university policies. The core of the challenge lies in balancing fairness, transparency, and the university's commitment to admitting qualified individuals based on merit and established criteria. The correct approach involves a commitment to the established admissions criteria and a transparent process. This means evaluating the applicant solely based on the information provided and the university's stated requirements, without allowing personal biases or external pressures to influence the decision. This aligns with the ethical principles of fairness and impartiality, ensuring that all applicants are judged by the same standards. Furthermore, it upholds the university's regulatory framework by adhering to its admissions policies, which are designed to ensure a merit-based selection process and maintain the academic reputation of Bello University. An incorrect approach would be to deviate from the established admissions criteria to accommodate the applicant's personal circumstances or the influence of a known individual. This would violate the principle of fairness, as it would create an unfair advantage for this applicant over others who have met the requirements through legitimate means. Such an action would also undermine the integrity of the admissions process, potentially leading to a perception of favoritism or corruption, and could expose the university to regulatory scrutiny for non-compliance with its own stated policies. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the applicant's request for special consideration entirely without proper review, as this could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence and potentially miss a valid reason for accommodation, though in this specific scenario, the pressure is to bend rules, not to ignore valid requests. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admissions policies and ethical guidelines. When faced with a potentially compromising situation, an admissions officer should 1. Identify the core ethical conflict. 2. Consult the relevant university policies and ethical codes. 3. Seek guidance from supervisors or the ethics committee if the situation is ambiguous. 4. Make a decision based strictly on established criteria and principles, ensuring documentation of the decision-making process. 5. Maintain confidentiality and impartiality throughout. Question 10. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual activity during a specific student's Bello University entrance exam, suggesting potential academic misconduct. The university's internal regulations stipulate a clear process for handling such allegations, emphasizing fairness and thorough investigation. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action for the university administration? Option A. Ignore the monitoring system's findings, assuming it may be prone to errors, and proceed with admitting all students without further scrutiny. Option B. Immediately disqualify the student from the entrance exam and ban them from future admissions based on the initial suspicion raised by the monitoring system. Option C. Publicly announce the suspected misconduct to the student body to deter future incidents, while simultaneously launching an investigation. Option D. Initiate a formal investigation into the student's exam session, gathering all available data from the monitoring system, and providing the student with an opportunity to explain the observed activity before any disciplinary action is considered. Correct answer is D. Initiate a formal investigation into the student's exam session, gathering all available data from the monitoring system, and providing the student with an opportunity to explain the observed activity before any disciplinary action is considered. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a student's academic integrity and the university's responsibility to uphold fair assessment practices. The student's actions, if confirmed, could undermine the validity of the entrance exam results and create an unfair advantage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any disciplinary action is proportionate, fair, and adheres strictly to the established procedures of Bello University. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation that respects the student's right to due process. This means gathering all relevant evidence, including the monitoring system's data, and providing the student with an opportunity to respond to the allegations before any decision is made. This aligns with the principles of natural justice and the ethical obligation to treat all individuals fairly and equitably, as implicitly expected within any academic institution's regulatory framework. The university must act with integrity, ensuring that its processes are transparent and its decisions are based on substantiated facts. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume guilt and impose a penalty without a proper investigation. This violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty and could lead to an unjust outcome. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the evidence from the monitoring system without proper consideration, potentially allowing academic misconduct to go unaddressed and compromising the integrity of the entrance exam. A third incorrect approach would be to leak the information about the suspected misconduct to other students or faculty before a formal investigation is concluded, which would be a breach of confidentiality and could unfairly damage the student's reputation. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This typically involves 1. Identifying the ethical issue and relevant university policies/regulations. 2. Gathering all pertinent facts and evidence objectively. 3. Considering the potential consequences of different actions. 4. Consulting relevant university guidelines or ethics committees if necessary. 5. Making a decision that is fair, just, and consistent with established procedures and ethical principles. 6. Documenting the process and the final decision. Question 11. Regulatory review indicates that during the Bello University entrance exam, a fellow applicant approaches you shortly before the exam begins, appearing distressed. They discreetly show you a small, folded piece of paper containing what appears to be formulas and key concepts, stating they are struggling to recall them and asking if you could just glance at it and remind them of a couple of things before they put it away. You are aware that the exam regulations strictly prohibit any form of external assistance or the possession of unauthorized materials. How should you ethically and professionally respond to this request? Option A. Immediately report the applicant to the exam proctor without speaking to them, as any interaction could be misconstrued. Option B. Briefly look at the paper and discreetly whisper a few reminders to the applicant to help them pass, as they seem to be in distress and you want to be helpful. Option C. Ignore the applicant and pretend you did not see or hear their request, hoping they will not pursue it further. Option D. Politely but firmly refuse the request, explaining that you cannot assist due to the strict rules against unauthorized materials and the importance of academic integrity for a fair exam. The correct answer is D. Politely but firmly refuse the request, explaining that you cannot assist due to the strict rules against unauthorized materials and the importance of academic integrity for a fair exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams can lead some individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The university's entrance exam regulations, as per the Bello University Entrance Exam Framework, strictly prohibit any form of academic dishonesty, including the use of unauthorized materials or assistance. Navigating this situation requires a strong ethical compass and adherence to established rules. The correct approach involves a direct and honest refusal to engage in any unethical behavior, coupled with a clear communication of the reasons for refusal based on academic integrity principles and university regulations. This upholds the student's personal integrity and respects the fairness of the examination process. The Bello University Entrance Exam Framework emphasizes honesty and fairness as core values, and any action that compromises these principles is unacceptable. An incorrect approach of providing the unauthorized assistance, even if motivated by a desire to help a friend, constitutes a direct violation of the exam's integrity rules. This action undermines the validity of the exam results and creates an unfair advantage for the recipient, thereby violating the principles of academic honesty. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the request and hoping the situation resolves itself is also professionally unsound. While it avoids direct participation in cheating, it fails to address the ethical breach and potentially allows an unethical act to occur without intervention, which can be seen as a passive endorsement of dishonesty. A third incorrect approach of reporting the friend without attempting to dissuade them first might be seen as overly punitive and could damage relationships unnecessarily. While reporting unethical behavior is important, a more nuanced approach that prioritizes education and dissuasion first, while still being prepared to report if necessary, is often preferred in professional settings, though the primary ethical imperative remains to prevent the cheating. The professional decision-making process in such a situation should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical dilemma and the potential consequences of each action. 2. Consulting relevant university regulations and ethical guidelines, in this case, the Andres Bello University Entrance Exam Framework. 3. Prioritizing honesty, integrity, and fairness. 4. Communicating clearly and directly about ethical boundaries. 5. Seeking to uphold the integrity of the examination process. 6. If necessary, escalating the issue through appropriate channels, but only after attempting to resolve it ethically and directly. Question 12. Consider a scenario where a student is preparing to submit a research paper for a new course at Andres Bello University. The student realizes that a significant portion of the research and writing for this paper is based on a project they completed in a previous course at the same university. The student is unsure whether using this prior work without explicit disclosure constitutes academic misconduct. What is the most ethically and academically sound course of action for the student? Option A. The student should inform the professor about the prior work and seek guidance on how to properly integrate or acknowledge it in the current submission. Option B. The student should significantly revise the previous work to make it appear entirely new without mentioning its origin. Option C. The student should proceed with submitting the paper, assuming that using their own previous work is permissible without any special notification. Option D. The student should ask classmates for their opinions on whether using their own prior work is acceptable. The correct answer is A. The student should inform the professor about the prior work and seek guidance on how to properly integrate or acknowledge it in the current submission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their work and the university's academic integrity policies. The core of the dilemma lies in balancing the encouragement of student initiative with the imperative to uphold ethical standards and prevent plagiarism. Careful judgment is required to discern between legitimate collaboration and academic misconduct. The correct approach involves the student proactively seeking guidance from the professor regarding the use of their previous work. This demonstrates a commitment to academic honesty and transparency. By informing the professor and seeking clarification on how to properly attribute or adapt their prior research, the student adheres to the principles of academic integrity, which are fundamental to the educational mission of Andres Bello University. This proactive stance aligns with ethical guidelines that emphasize honesty, fairness, and respect for intellectual property. An incorrect approach would be to submit the work without any disclosure, assuming it is acceptable because it is their own prior effort. This fails to acknowledge the potential for self-plagiarism or the expectation that new academic work should be original in its current context. It violates the ethical principle of transparency and could be construed as a misrepresentation of the student's current contribution. Another incorrect approach would be to significantly alter the previous work without proper attribution or acknowledgement of its origins. While seemingly a way to avoid direct plagiarism, it still misleads the academic community about the extent of original thought and effort in the new submission. This undermines the integrity of the academic record and the student's own intellectual development. A further incorrect approach would be to seek advice from peers who may not fully understand the university's specific policies on academic integrity, potentially leading to misguided actions. Relying on informal advice rather than official channels can result in unintentional breaches of academic conduct. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the institution's academic integrity policies. When in doubt, students should always err on the side of caution and seek clarification from the relevant authority, in this case, the professor or the university's academic affairs office. This proactive communication ensures that actions align with ethical expectations and regulatory frameworks, fostering a culture of honesty and scholarly rigor. Question 13. Operational review demonstrates that a candidate for the Andres Bello University entrance exam has submitted a request for a special accommodation due to a sudden, severe family emergency that occurred immediately before the scheduled examination date, impacting their ability to prepare and perform optimally. The candidate is a strong applicant otherwise, and the emergency is well documented. University's admissions committee must decide how to proceed while upholding the fairness and integrity of the entrance examination process. Option A. Grant the candidate an immediate exemption from the entrance exam and admit them based on their academic record, given the extenuating circumstances. Option B. Inform the candidate that the examination period has passed and no further accommodations can be made, advising them to reapply for the next admission cycle. Option C. Initiate a formal review of the documented emergency and explore available university policies for granting a deferred examination or an alternative assessment method that maintains the rigor and fairness of the admissions process. Option D. Allow the candidate to retake the entrance exam immediately, without further investigation or formal procedural steps, to accommodate their urgent situation. Correct answer is C. Initiate a formal review of the documented emergency and explore available university policies for granting a deferred examination or an alternative assessment method that maintains the rigor and fairness of the admissions process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between maintaining academic integrity and responding to a student's personal circumstances. The university entrance exam, as a gatekeeper to higher education, demands a rigorous and fair assessment process. Any deviation from established protocols, even with good intentions, can undermine the credibility of the examination and the institution. The core ethical considerations revolve around fairness to all applicants, upholding the standards of the examination, and the university's responsibility to its students and the broader academic community. The correct approach involves a transparent and structured process that prioritizes the integrity of the examination while offering appropriate support. This means acknowledging the student's situation and exploring avenues for remediation or alternative assessment that do not compromise the fairness of the entrance exam for other candidates. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity, which require that all assessments are conducted fairly and that results accurately reflect a candidate's knowledge and abilities. Furthermore, university regulations typically outline procedures for handling exceptional circumstances, ensuring that decisions are made consistently and equitably. An incorrect approach of immediately granting a special exemption without a formal review process fails to uphold the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. It risks setting a precedent that could be exploited and erodes trust in the examination system. This action would likely violate university policies on standardized testing and admissions, which are designed to ensure a level playing field. Another incorrect approach of dismissing the student's request without exploring any potential accommodations overlooks the university's ethical obligation to consider individual circumstances within established guidelines. While the integrity of the exam is paramount, a complete disregard for a student's genuine hardship can be seen as lacking in compassion and potentially discriminatory if not handled with due process. This approach fails to engage in a problem-solving process that balances competing ethical demands. A third incorrect approach of allowing the student to retake the exam immediately without any investigation into the circumstances or a clear policy for such situations is also problematic. This bypasses established procedures for special considerations and could be perceived as preferential treatment, again undermining fairness to other applicants. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the student's situation and expressing empathy. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and regulations regarding admissions, examinations, and special circumstances. 3. Initiating a formal review process to assess the validity of the student's claim and its potential impact on their performance. 4. Exploring all available and appropriate accommodations or alternative pathways as outlined by university policy, ensuring these do not compromise the integrity of the entrance examination. 5. Communicating the decision and the rationale clearly and respectfully to the student. Question 14. The investigation demonstrates that a prospective student preparing for the Bello University entrance exam has encountered conflicting information regarding a specific historical event crucial for the exam. While official study materials provide a detailed account, an unverified online summary presents a significantly different and potentially simplified interpretation. The student is concerned about accurately representing this event in their exam responses. Option A. Seek clarification from the professor or an academic advisor and consult additional official university resources to verify the historical event's details before the exam. Option B. Rely on the unverified online summary, assuming it captures the essence of the event for the exam's purpose. Option C. Ignore the discrepancy and proceed with studying based on the official materials, without further investigation into the online summary's claims. Option D. Share the unverified online summary with fellow prospective students, highlighting the discrepancies found. Correct answer is A. Seek clarification from the professor or an academic advisor and consult additional official university resources to verify the historical event's details before the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity. The pressure to achieve high marks, coupled with the availability of potentially misleading information, creates a complex decision-making environment. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without compromising personal ethics or the university's academic standards. The correct approach involves seeking clarification and additional resources from authorized university channels. This demonstrates a commitment to understanding the material accurately and ethically, specifically consulting with the professor or academic advisor and utilizing official university library resources aligns with the principles of academic honesty and intellectual integrity, which are foundational to the Bello University's regulatory framework for entrance exams. This proactive and transparent method ensures that any learning is genuine and earned, avoiding any form of academic misconduct. An incorrect approach of relying on unverified online summaries risks misinterpreting complex concepts or encountering factually inaccurate information. This directly violates the spirit of academic integrity by seeking shortcuts that bypass genuine learning and could lead to a superficial understanding, ultimately failing the purpose of the entrance exam. Another incorrect approach, that of sharing the potentially misleading information with peers, constitutes academic dishonesty by facilitating the spread of unreliable data and potentially encouraging others to engage in unethical study practices. This undermines the fairness of the examination process for all candidates. A third incorrect approach, ignoring the discrepancy and proceeding with the exam based on the flawed summary, demonstrates a lack of critical thinking and a disregard for accuracy, which are essential qualities for university admission. This approach prioritizes completion over correctness and ethical conduct. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and adherence to established guidelines. This involves 1. Identifying the ethical conflict or dilemma. 2. Gathering all relevant information and understanding the university's specific regulations regarding academic conduct. 3. Consulting with appropriate authorities, professors, advisors for clarification. 4. Evaluating potential courses of action based on ethical principles and regulatory compliance. 5. Choosing the action that upholds academic integrity and promotes genuine learning. Question 15. The analysis reveals that a prospective student preparing for the Bello University entrance exam has approached an administrative staff member with concerns about the strictness of the exam's academic integrity rules. The student asks, "Are there any gray areas or minor ways to ensure I do my best without actually cheating, like having a quick glance at notes if the proctor isn't looking?" The administrative staff member must respond in a manner that upholds the university's standards. Which of the following responses best reflects the required professional and ethical conduct? Option A. Advise the student that while direct cheating is forbidden, there are subtle methods of information recall that are difficult to police and that they should use their best judgment to perform well. Option B. Reassure the student that while cheating is not allowed, the exam environment is often stressful and minor deviations might not be noticed, suggesting they focus on their preparation and not worry too much about strict enforcement. Option C. Provide a general overview of academic integrity, but avoid directly addressing the student's specific question about gray areas or minor ways, hoping they will infer the university's stance. Option D. Clearly and firmly explain that any attempt to gain an unfair advantage, including glancing at unauthorized notes, is considered academic misconduct and will lead to immediate disqualification from the entrance exam, emphasizing that the exam is designed to assess individual knowledge and preparation. The correct answer is D. Clearly and firmly explain that any attempt to gain an unfair advantage, including glancing at unauthorized notes, is considered academic misconduct and will lead to immediate disqualification from the entrance exam, emphasizing that the exam is designed to assess individual knowledge and preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well on a crucial entrance exam, coupled with the potential for a significant personal setback if unsuccessful, creates a high-stakes environment where ethical boundaries can be tested. The need for careful judgment arises from the responsibility to uphold the principles of fairness and honesty that underpin the educational system, while also acknowledging the student's aspirations. Correct approach involves a direct and transparent communication of the university's academic integrity policies to the student. This approach is right because it directly addresses the student's query by providing accurate information about what constitutes academic misconduct and the severe consequences associated with it. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of academic honesty and fairness expected of all candidates applying to Bello University, by clearly stating that any attempt to gain an unfair advantage, such as using unauthorized materials or seeking external assistance during the exam, is prohibited and will result in disqualification. The university upholds its commitment to a rigorous and equitable selection process. This proactive stance ensures that all applicants are aware of the rules and are evaluated on their own merits. An incorrect approach that involves downplaying the seriousness of academic misconduct or suggesting that minor infractions might be overlooked would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the university's established regulations and the fundamental ethical principle of equal treatment for all candidates. Such an approach undermines the integrity of the entrance exam and creates an unfair playing field. Another incorrect approach, which is to provide vague or ambiguous guidance on what constitutes academic misconduct, is also professionally unacceptable. This failure arises from a lack of clarity and a potential to mislead the student, thereby increasing the risk of unintentional violations. Ethical decision-making in such situations requires a commitment to clear communication and adherence to established policies. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the core ethical principles at play, such as honesty, fairness, and integrity. 2. Familiarizing oneself thoroughly with the specific regulations and policies of the institution, in this case, Bello University's entrance exam guidelines. 3. Prioritizing clear, direct, and truthful communication with the individual involved. 4. Avoiding any action or advice that could be construed as facilitating or condoning unethical behavior. 5. Documenting any advice or communication provided, especially in sensitive situations. Question 16. System analysis indicates that a prospective applicant for the Bello University entrance exam approaches you, an individual with knowledge of the exam's general structure and difficulty, and asks for specific details about the types of questions that will appear on the upcoming exam, stating they are feeling overwhelmed and need an edge. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Politely decline the request, explaining that providing specific exam details would compromise the integrity of the entrance examination and is against university regulations, and suggest the applicant focus on general preparation. Option B. Suggest that the applicant seek out unofficial study guides that might contain practice questions similar to those on the exam, without explicitly confirming their authenticity or relevance. Option C. Provide the applicant with a general overview of the topics covered, but avoid specific question formats or content to give them a slight advantage. Option D. Advise the applicant on how to best guess answers effectively, as this is a skill that can be learned and applied to any exam. The correct answer is A. Politely decline the request, explaining that providing specific exam details would compromise the integrity of the entrance examination and is against university regulations, and suggest the applicant focus on general preparation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams, especially for a prestigious institution like Bello University, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The core of the challenge lies in upholding ethical principles and regulatory compliance when faced with a situation that could benefit the individual but compromise the integrity of the examination process. Careful judgment is required to navigate this situation without violating established ethical codes or university regulations. The correct approach involves prioritizing academic integrity and adhering strictly to the established examination protocols. This means refusing to engage in any form of academic dishonesty, such as sharing exam content or seeking unauthorized assistance. The justification for this approach is rooted in the fundamental ethical principles of honesty, fairness, and respect for the rules governing academic admissions. Specifically, within the framework of Andres Bello University's entrance exam regulations, any act that compromises the integrity of the assessment is a direct violation. This includes not only the act of cheating, but also facilitating or encouraging it. Upholding these standards ensures that all candidates are evaluated on their own merits, maintaining the credibility of the university and the value of its degrees. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with information about the exam questions or content. This is a direct violation of academic integrity and the specific regulations governing the Andres Bello University entrance exam, which implicitly or explicitly prohibit the disclosure of examination materials before or during the exam. Such an action undermines the fairness of the assessment process, giving an unfair advantage to one candidate over others, and devaluing the efforts of honest applicants. It also breaches the trust placed in individuals involved in the examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and take no action. While this might seem like a neutral stance, it fails to address a potential breach of academic integrity. By not reporting or discouraging the unethical behavior, the individual implicitly allows for the possibility of academic dishonesty to occur, which is contrary to the spirit of maintaining a fair and ethical examination environment. This inaction can be interpreted as a failure to uphold professional responsibility. A third incorrect approach would be to offer to help the student prepare in a way that subtly hints at providing exam-specific information without explicitly stating it. This is a form of complicity and circumvention of the rules. It still compromises the integrity of the exam by suggesting an unfair advantage, even if not directly providing answers. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the ethical code and regulatory framework governing the specific context. Professionals should first identify the potential ethical conflict and the relevant rules. They should then consider the potential consequences of each possible action, both for themselves and for the institution. In this case, the immediate priority is to uphold academic integrity. If faced with such a request, the professional should firmly but politely decline, explaining that providing such information would be a violation of the exam's integrity and university regulations. If the situation warrants, reporting the incident to the appropriate university authority for investigation would be the next responsible step, ensuring that the university's disciplinary procedures are followed. Question 17. To address the challenge of a student submitting work that appears to be plagiarized, a professor at Andres Bello University discovers significant similarities between the student's assignment and online sources. The professor has a duty to uphold the university's academic integrity standards while also considering the student's overall academic record and potential for growth. Which of the following actions best reflects the appropriate professional and ethical response according to Andres Bello University's regulatory framework for academic misconduct? Option A. Conduct a thorough investigation, consult the university's academic integrity policy, and then schedule a meeting with the student to discuss the findings and allow for their explanation. Option B. Overlook the suspected plagiarism, assuming it might be unintentional, and grade the assignment based on its overall merit. Option C. Immediately assign a failing grade for the course to the student and report the incident to the academic dean without further discussion. Option D. Publicly announce in class that plagiarism will not be tolerated and imply that a specific student's work is under scrutiny. The correct answer is C. Immediately assign a failing grade for the course to the student and report the incident to the academic dean without further discussion. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate needs of a student with the established academic integrity policies of Andres Bello University. The professor is faced with a situation where a student, who is otherwise a good performer, has submitted work that appears to be plagiarized. The challenge lies in upholding the university's commitment to academic honesty while also considering the student's circumstances and potential for learning from the mistake. A hasty or overly punitive response could be detrimental to the student's academic future, while a lenient response could undermine the integrity of the academic process. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness, consistency, and adherence to university regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation and a structured conversation with the student. This approach prioritizes understanding the situation before making a decision. It involves gathering evidence of plagiarism, consulting the university's academic integrity policy, and then meeting with the student to discuss the findings and allow them to explain their actions. This process aligns with the principles of due process and fairness, ensuring that the student has an opportunity to be heard. It also upholds the university's commitment to academic integrity by following established procedures for addressing plagiarism. This method is ethically sound as it seeks to educate and correct rather than solely punish, and it is procedurally correct by adhering to institutional guidelines. An incorrect approach would be to immediately fail the student without any further inquiry. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of unintentional plagiarism or extenuating circumstances, and it bypasses the university's established procedures for handling academic misconduct. Ethically, it is unfair to penalize a student without a proper investigation and opportunity for them to respond. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the suspected plagiarism and allow the assignment to be graded as is. This directly violates the university's academic integrity policy and undermines the value of honest academic work. It also sets a dangerous precedent, suggesting that plagiarism may go unaddressed, which erodes the credibility of the institution. A third incorrect approach would be to confront the student publicly or in a way that is accusatory and lacks empathy. This is unprofessional and can create a hostile environment, hindering any potential for constructive dialogue or learning. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Identify the ethical and regulatory conflict. 2. Gather all relevant facts and evidence. 3. Consult applicable university policies and codes of conduct. 4. Consider the potential impact of different actions on the student and the institution. 5. Engage in open and fair communication with the involved parties. 6. Make a decision that is consistent with policies, ethical principles, and promotes learning and integrity. Question 18. The review process indicates that a prospective student, during a timed essay portion of the Bello University entrance exam, appears to have accessed external notes that were not permitted. The evaluator is aware of this potential violation. What is the most ethically appropriate course of action for the evaluator? Option A. Discreetly note the observation and proceed with evaluating the essay based on its content, assuming the student may have had legitimate reasons for the notes. Option B. Approach the student privately after the exam to discuss the observation, explain the university's policy on academic integrity, and document the conversation. Option C. Immediately halt the exam for the student and report the incident to the admissions committee for disciplinary action. Option D. Ignore the observation, as it is a minor issue that could unfairly disadvantage the student in the competitive application process. The correct answer is A. Discreetly note the observation and proceed with evaluating the essay based on its content, assuming the student may have had legitimate reasons for the notes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to present their best work and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation. The pressure to succeed in a competitive entrance exam can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. Careful judgment is required to uphold ethical standards while still supporting a student's legitimate academic aspirations. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent conversation with the student about the ethical implications of their actions and the university's policies on academic misconduct. This approach prioritizes honesty, integrity, and adherence to the established regulatory framework of Bello University. By clearly communicating the rules and consequences, the evaluator upholds the principles of fairness and academic rigor that are fundamental to the university's entrance examination process. This aligns with the ethical guidelines expected of all individuals involved in academic admissions, ensuring a level playing field for all applicants. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking the issue or downplaying its significance would fail to uphold the university's standards and could set a dangerous precedent. This would violate the principle of academic integrity, which is a cornerstone of any educational institution. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately reporting the student without attempting to understand the situation or provide guidance, might be overly punitive and fail to address the underlying reasons for the student's actions. potentially hindering their development and understanding of ethical conduct. This could also be seen as a failure to exercise professional discretion and a lack of empathy, which are important in an educational context. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the ethical conflict. This is followed by gathering all relevant facts, understanding the applicable university regulations and ethical codes, and then considering the potential consequences of each course of action. The chosen approach should prioritize integrity, fairness, and adherence to established rules, while also considering the educational and developmental aspects of the situation. Open communication and a commitment to upholding academic standards are paramount. Question 19. What factors determine the ethical and regulatory appropriateness of an admissions committee's decision when an applicant presents compelling personal circumstances that may have impacted their academic performance, but they otherwise meet the minimum entry requirements for the Bello University entrance exam? Option A. The extent to which the applicant's personal narrative evokes sympathy and the perceived potential for future success based on non-academic factors. Option B. A comprehensive evaluation of the applicant's academic record against the established admission criteria, considering any provided documentation for exceptional circumstances in a fair and consistent manner, in line with university policy. Option C. The influence of external stakeholders or personal connections advocating for the applicant's admission, regardless of their academic standing. Option D. The committee's subjective interpretation of the applicant's character and potential, independent of the formal admission requirements. Correct answer is A. The extent to which the applicant's personal narrative evokes sympathy and the perceived potential for future success based on non-academic factors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the personal circumstances of a student. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure fair evaluation, and uphold the established criteria for entry, all while considering the impact of their decision on the applicant's future. The ethical dilemma lies in determining whether to strictly adhere to stated criteria or to allow for exceptional circumstances, and how to do so without compromising the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the applicant's academic record against the established admission requirements, considering any supplementary information provided in a consistent and equitable manner. This approach is justified by the principle of fairness and the need to maintain transparent and objective admission standards, as expected by the regulatory framework governing university admissions in Venezuela. The Bello University entrance exams guidelines likely emphasize meritocracy and equal opportunity, requiring that all applicants be assessed based on the same criteria. Deviating from these criteria without a clear, predefined process for exceptional cases could lead to accusations of favoritism or discrimination, undermining the credibility of the university. An incorrect approach would be to grant admission solely based on the applicant's compelling personal narrative, without a rigorous assessment of their academic qualifications against the established benchmarks. This fails to uphold the principle of meritocracy and could set a precedent for subjective decision-making, potentially disadvantaging other equally deserving candidates who meet the academic requirements. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the application outright due to the personal circumstances, without a fair evaluation of the applicant's academic potential and their ability to succeed in the program. This could be seen as lacking empathy and failing to consider the holistic profile of the applicant, potentially overlooking a candidate who, despite challenges, possesses the necessary aptitude. A third incorrect approach would be to seek external influence or pressure to admit the student, bypassing the established committee review process. This directly violates principles of institutional integrity and fair process, and could lead to severe reputational damage and regulatory sanctions. Professionals in admissions should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes objective evaluation against established criteria. This involves clearly defining admission standards, ensuring all applications are reviewed consistently, and having a transparent process for considering any exceptional circumstances that are clearly outlined in the university's admission policies. When faced with difficult cases, professionals should refer to established guidelines, consult with colleagues or supervisors, and document their reasoning thoroughly to ensure accountability and fairness. Question 20. The efficiency study reveals that while student satisfaction with campus facilities has increased, there has been a significant decline in the perceived quality of academic advising, a key metric for student success. The university administration is preparing its annual report for stakeholders, and there is pressure to present a uniformly positive outlook. What is the most ethically sound approach for the university administration to take regarding the findings of the efficiency study in their annual report? Option A. Highlight the increase in student satisfaction with campus facilities and omit any mention of the decline in academic advising to maintain a positive institutional image. Option B. Present both the positive findings on campus facilities and the negative findings on academic advising, along with a commitment to developing a plan to address the decline in advising quality. Option C. Commission a new, shorter study that focuses solely on areas of improvement, effectively bypassing the negative findings of the initial comprehensive study. Option D. Publicly acknowledge the decline in academic advising, but attribute it to external factors beyond the university's control without proposing any specific internal solutions. The correct answer is B. Present both the positive findings on campus facilities and the negative findings on academic advising, along with a commitment to developing a plan to address the decline in advising quality. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it pits the pursuit of institutional improvement against the potential for misrepresenting data to achieve that goal. University entrance exam context implies a need for integrity and ethical conduct in academic and administrative processes. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for positive outcomes with the obligation to be truthful and transparent. Careful judgment is required to navigate the temptation to manipulate results for perceived benefit. The correct approach involves acknowledging the study's findings honestly, even if they are not immediately favorable, and using them as a basis for genuine, data-driven improvement strategies. This upholds the ethical principle of honesty and integrity, which are paramount in academic institutions. Specifically, it aligns with the implicit ethical guidelines of any reputable educational body that values truthfulness in its operations and reporting. By focusing on genuine improvement based on accurate data, the university demonstrates a commitment to its core mission and the trust placed in it by students, faculty, and the wider community. An incorrect approach that involves selectively presenting data to highlight only positive aspects, while omitting or downplaying negative findings, constitutes a form of deception. This violates the ethical imperative of transparency and can lead to flawed decision-making, as the true extent of issues remains hidden. Such an action erodes trust and can have long-term negative consequences for the university's reputation and its ability to address challenges effectively. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the study entirely due to unfavorable results without further investigation or consideration, is professionally irresponsible. This demonstrates a lack of commitment to continuous improvement and an unwillingness to confront potentially difficult truths. It suggests a preference for maintaining the status quo over evidence-based progress, which is detrimental to any organization seeking to excel. A further incorrect approach, such as fabricating or altering data to present a more favorable picture, is a severe ethical breach and potentially illegal. This undermines the very foundation of academic integrity and can lead to severe repercussions, including reputational damage and loss of accreditation. It represents a complete disregard for professional ethics and the principles of honest inquiry. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a commitment to data integrity, open communication, and a focus on constructive action. Professionals should first ensure the accuracy and completeness of the data. Then, they should communicate findings transparently, even if they are unfavorable, to relevant stakeholders. Finally, they should develop and implement strategies for improvement based on the complete and accurate understanding of the situation, rather than on manipulated or incomplete information. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are ethically sound and contribute to genuine progress.